Hey, you're listening to gwot.rocks, God, the World, and Other Things. I'm Kenny Price, your host. Our mission? You got it. Say it with me. Advancing equilibrium in the midst of an agitated world. This is Season 15, Episode 325, title, Letter to the American Church. Subtitle, An Overview of Eric Metaxas's prophetic and passionate new book. There are two people on the media scene right now that you need to be watching, following, and paying close attention to during these historically turbulent days. The first man, Jack Hibbs, is the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills in Chino Hills, California. He is quickly becoming America's pastor. He is Bible-believing, conservative in his biblical theology and approach, fearless when it comes to speaking the truth about hard subjects, and inspiring and encouraging to Christians who are sincere in their desire to live out their Christian faith, especially in hard days like today. The hyperlink to his website is in the show notes. There you will find the connections to all his endeavors you can find on the web. I highly recommend you check him out and pay close attention to what he is saying. The second person you need to follow is Eric Metaxas. He is a Yale graduate best known for his biographies on William Wilberforce and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. In addition to being a prolific author, he is the host of Socrates in the City. As he writes on the Socrates in the City YouTube channel, the Greek philosopher Socrates famously said the unexamined life is not worth living. Taking this as a starting point, Eric Metaxas thought it would be valuable to create a forum that might encourage busy and successful professionals in thinking about the bigger questions in life. Thus, Socrates in the City, Conversations on the Examined Life, was born. Every month or so, Socrates in the City sponsors an event in which people can begin a dialogue on life, God, and other small topics by hearing a notable thinker and writer such as Os Guinness or Peter Kraft. These events are meant to be both thought-provoking and entertaining. Eric is also the host of the nationally syndicated Eric Metaxas radio show, The Show About Everything, which also airs as a weekly television program on TBN. His website hyperlink is in the show notes and can connect you with all things Metaxas, which I highly recommend. On both of these guys' home-based websites, once you have the sites open, I would recommend you drag the main web page to your desktop if you have one, and it should create a hyperlink button to their site. You will find this extremely helpful to keep you connected to all that they're doing. Eric Metaxas' latest book, The Passionate and Prophetic Letter to the American Church, argues that the American church has always been a force for good in the world, but that it has lost its way in recent decades. The rise of secularism, the decline of biblical literacy, and the increasing acceptance of sin are evidence of this decline. He argues that the American church is in danger of repeating the mistakes of the German church in the 1930s. He warns that the church is becoming increasingly silent in the face of evil, and that this silence is a form of complicity. One of the most profound elements of the book is that Eric uses the word evil to describe the reality the American church is up against, and he even names some well-respected Christian leaders as those complicit in the digression of the church from the front lines of social impact and overt influence, placing them and the American church as a whole in the category of religious leaders of the German church in the 1930s. He notes that both churches were faced with a rising tide of evil, and that both churches responded with silence. In the German church, this silence was rooted in fear. The overwhelming majority of German pastors were afraid of speaking out against the Nazi regime for fear of being arrested or killed. In the American church, the silence is rooted in a different fear, the fear of being labeled as intolerant or hateful. Metaxas argues that both of these fears are misplaced. He says that the church has a duty to speak out against evil, even if it means facing persecution. He also says that the church should not be afraid to be labeled as intolerant or hateful, because true love is always intolerant of evil. He argues that the American church is in danger of becoming irrelevant if it does not speak out against the evils of our time. Metaxas then goes on to identify some of the specific evils that the American church needs to speak out against. He mentions abortion, same-sex marriage, transgenderism, critical race theory, and Black Lives Matter. He argues that all these evil movements are not just personal matters, but are based on false ideologies, even using strong language to say that they all share a bitter taproot that leads all the way down to hell, and emphasizes that they are harmful and have a negative impact on individuals and to society as a whole. Metaxas concludes by calling on the American church to repent of its silence and to take a stand against evil. He says that the church must be willing to fight for truth, justice, and love, even if it means facing persecution. He also says that the church must be willing to be labeled as intolerant or hateful, reminding us that true love is always intolerant of evil. In addition to these main points, here are some additional insights from the book. The church must be willing to engage in political activism. Metaxas argues that the church cannot simply stand on the sidelines and watch as evil is done. The church must be willing to get involved in the political process and fight for what is right. To allow the world to silence us in the political realm is precisely how the German church was silenced. The church is at a crossroads, and it must choose between silence and action. The church must be a voice for truth and righteousness in a world that is increasingly dark. The church must be willing to speak out against injustice. Metaxas says that the church cannot be silent in the face of injustice. The church must speak out against racism, sexism, and all other forms of discrimination. We are obliged to courageously bring our faith to bear on all issues. The church must be willing to love its enemies. Metaxas says that the church must love its enemies, even those who are doing evil. This does not mean that the church should condone evil, but it does mean that the church should show love and compassion to those who are doing evil. This manifestation of sacrificial love and action, which is willing to do the hard thing, flows from God, the one who is love. My friend, Letter to the American Church is a powerful, thought-provoking book and challenging call to action for the church, and it's a reminder that the church has a vital role to play in society. I would say a foundational role to play in society. Metaxas' arguments are well-reasoned and persuasive, and he does not shy away from calling the church to account. This book is well written and a must-read for any Christian who is concerned about the state of the American church. You can find it online for purchase. You can also check it out from your local library. And with that, my friend, I bid you peace.